Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about bypassing misinformation and other things. It is Tuesday, January 7, 2025. And so I guess we should start with our new leader, Elon Musk, who has sort of eclipsed that guy, Donald Trump, that used to be considered important and apparently is in charge of not only America, but pretty much the whole world now. He has now, Scott Galloway, I think, correctly says Elon Musk made the most brilliant financial investment in decades by spending 200 million or whatever it was on Trump and immediately getting like 200 billion rewards in the stock price changes. So this has caused him to believe that not only is every thought that pops into his head the word of God, but that he can do no wrong and that he should also be heavily involved in politics, which is his latest venture. And he's been incredibly financially successful by jumping into politics and in particular jumping into right-wing Donald Trump style politics, which consists of like raving at everything you see on the TV like an angry man, and jumping to conclusions and making outrageous pronouncements based on false information, which has been very successful for Trump and it's being very successful for Musk. But now he's meddling not only American politics but European politics. He wanted the alliance. He supported the Alliance for Deutschland, which is the new Nazis taking power in
Yeah.
Germany, and he now there's something called Reform UK, which is also far right, but their far right leader is not far right enough for Musk because he isn't pushing some Syrian disinformation. There's some misinformation about people getting raped in Britain, a big scandal pushed by a guy who's Robinson, a guy named Robinson, who has already been jailed for contempt of court. He sounds basically like the British version of Alex Jones, and the Farage is not supporting him enough. So Musk has said he's not tough enough. We need a tougher guy that will push more far right stuff in Britain. And as far as Germany, the Chancellor of Germany came out and said, Germany's a strong and stable democracy. Musk can say what he wants. In Germany, the will of the citizens prevails, not the erratic statements of a billionaire from the USA. And the UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has stepped in after Musk launched a vitriolic attack on one of his ministers, saying those who are spreading lies and misinformation as far and as wide as possible are not interested in victims of crime. They're interested in themselves. And I think both of those guys are quite correct. But anyway, we now have it is a new thing in America, I think, at least in our generation, to have an oligarch like this. Now, I think William Randolph Hearst was a similar character decades ago, where you just have a business leader so powerful that he controls the government. And by controlling the media, he can push disinformation and create things like I remember William Randolph Hearst could start wars. And Elon
Yeah.
Musk certainly seems to think he can shove the world around like chess pieces. That's probably true. So I think we can expect now the thing about now Russia has much more experience with oligarchs, and Putin keeps them under an iron thumb. He demands a huge amount of money from them, and he just has them murdered as soon as they step out of line.
Yeah.
We'll see if Trump figures that out. That you really have to keep a tight rein on your oligarchs, or they'll run away with everything. So far, Trump seems to be just letting Elon Musk drag him around. Like he had to reverse his position on H-1B visas just to please Elon Musk. So apparently, yeah, he regards Elon Musk as a source of money for primarying his Republican opponents, and he regards that as more important than anything else. So he's basically controlled by Musk at this point. There's a lot of stories coming from the New York Times and Maggie Haberman saying that Trump is very unhappy with the amount of attention Elon Musk is getting and getting irritated by him, but they haven't had a split yet. So we'll see. But that
Yeah.
I think the problem is if Trump came out directly against Elon Musk, it's not clear at all who would win. I don't think he has any power over Elon Musk. And Elon Musk has a lot more money. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Elon Musk also wants to stop Wikipedia. He's been angry at them for a long time, but his latest complaint is like everything I've heard from him for the last month, several months, is just based on completely a lie. Like essentially, what happened is Wikipedia published is having their fund drive, and they seem to have this 2 or 3 times a year. They have a fund drive, and they published a pie chart showing how they spend their money. And the pie chart shows that they spend 70% of their budget on equity. And so some far right character said, they're spending 17% of their money on DEI. They're woke. We have to shut them down. And it's not DEI. Equity is reliability, expanding coverage of underrepresented topics, recruiting editors with expertise in neglected subject areas, and developing tools to identify and counter coordinated disinformation campaigns. So it is quite reasonable that they spend money on that. And by the way, it is quite logical that purveyors of disinformation like Elon Musk and Donald Trump want to stamp that out.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
reason they claim for stamping it out is just based on misunderstanding a draft. Anyway, that seems to be what he always does. He'd been doing it. Remember the guy he accused of being a pedophile years ago, just based on nothing. If he's mad at somebody, he just throws crazy accusations at them. Anyway,
Well, it's the same what that McCarthy did, right?
yeah, yes, like McCarthy, yep, and a straight line from McCarthy to Trump. And it's
Yeah.
clear that Musk totally learned from Trump how to do this. He discovered that you can do right-wing politics by just throwing out angry statements based on nothing, and that'll be very successful, and it is being very successful. Um, However, like I say, I have hope in the grand scheme of history that over perhaps the next decade, there will come a progressive movement to as a after a backlash comes from all this, because eventually all the right wingers will realize that they're not getting anything they were promised. Some of them have already noticed he's not going to lower the price of eggs, and he's not going to stop immigration, and he's not going to build the wall. And at some point, they'll notice that nothing he says comes true, I suppose.
I would have to agree. Yeah.
But it may take a long time. Anyway, um, so I had a bunch of similar arguments about politics, but I think I'll just skip to the one that I thought was the most interesting and
Okay.
most important, which is how should you resist this? If you are in fact educated and you believe in the truth, how do you deal with all these people that just believe this endless fount of bullshit coming from the right? And one thing, I thought this was very helpful. They used a technique called bypassing. The one thing, see, in academic circles, if you go get a degree and you go to school and you learn how to argue for things, you learn sort of the Socratic argument where you would make a statement and then you'd be expected to produce evidence to support your statement. And the person on the other side will produce evidence to show that you're wrong. And the person with the best evidence will win. That is not what happens at all in people that follow disinformation. They have an emotional attachment to believe something that sounds exciting, and they don't want to admit they're wrong. So they say, don't confront them directly with like evidence, like a New York Times article or something. That will just make them angry and make them more entrenched. What you do is you bypass. So instead of directly addressing the information, you offer accurate information that implies that there's a little more to it. So they say if they make a factually incorrect statement, genetically modified food have health risks, then instead of attacking it directly, you just highlight that genetically modified foods help the bee population. And this is a sort of indirect bank shot, which is more likely to actually penetrate and help them. And I've seen this be quite effective. I know, I think especially in touchy areas like politics, this comes in. I wonder if psychologists use this because psychotherapists have essentially the same problem. Somebody has a belief that they're clinging to, that they have an emotional need, and your whole job is to somehow help them get over that. And directly confronting it, creating a crisis, is probably not the most effective thing. I think what's best is to sort of nibble at the edges. Say, oh, part of that's a little wrong. There's kind of a joke about that. Anyway, I think this is very important because what most Democrats seem to be doing now is like cutting off their family members who are right wingers,
Yeah.
saying they're evil and I won't even talk to them anymore. And this, I think, is not going to lead anywhere good. I mean, the thing is to maintain relations with people, find something you like about being with them, and 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 only gently and indirectly try to weaken their adherence to the dangerous beliefs. But directly fighting with them is just going to split us in half, where you have a civil war again. I mean, that's no good.
Yeah. No, Sam, I agree with you. And it's interesting. I was thinking about this. RFK Jr.
Yeah,
has come out and against vaccines, as we know.
yeah,
And the thing is, when you listen to him, he says things like, we want to eliminate vaccines. Okay, I agree with that. I mean, sorry, I don't agree with
yeah,
that.
yeah,
we want to get rid of high fructose corn syrup. Okay, I kind of agree with that. We want to, I think, eliminate added sugar to a lot of foods. Okay, I agree with that.
Yeah. Oh, and a few
And
years
and
ago, he was all about like water pollution, which is definitely, I'm with him there.
yeah, and then he also adds into that we need to remove fluoride from water supply.
I'm not with that.
And so what I realize is he has some really good ideas, but then he has some extreme that are others. There,
Yeah.
you have some things that are kind of, yeah, I agree with that, I agree with that. And then he comes up with a really crazy one, like no vaccines
Yep.
or yeah.
This is why I think Bernie Sanders came out and made sort of a statement saying, well, there are some things I agree with him about. We could find some common ground, kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
And I do understand the sort of angry people that say, no, you're like giving him credibility. That means you are not attacking his bad things. And I can sort of see both sides. To some extent, that means he might get approved. But, this is the question. Could you control him and keep the good side without getting the bad side? The Republican Party thought they could do that with Trump. They thought they could rein him in and put guardrails around him and adults in the room so they could benefit from his ability to get a crowd cheering for you and get votes, but they could hold back his stupid ideas of policy. And it totally failed. So I don't know about
yeah.
RFK. I don't know if you can somehow limit his harm.
Well, he has people behind him
And
that are,
if this is why I often wish people would have like some supervision, like if he had somebody in his life. Elon Musk clearly needs like a good wife that would say, why don't you build more cars and rockets and stop the right-wing politics a bit? If a lot of people, if there's just some sort of trusted figure sort of supervising them, they'd be so much better off.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
but some people will not take any direction. And Trump is certainly that way, and I think Musk is that way. And RFK, I don't know. I imagine.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He
And
is.
apparently he's going to be in charge of American Health Service. And of course, the thing is, there are a bunch of problems with the American health system. So
Yeah,
the idea that we need a radical in there to change things, I can understand that, but I'm not sure he's the right guy. I'm not sure he's going to make it better.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you completely, Sam. I
Like,
agree.
Musk and his Doge thing, he is right that the government wastes a lot of money and that the national debt is really growing too fast. It'd be nice if someone could have an intelligent way to fix that, but I don't think he's going to have that.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. I agree. Well, let's kind of move on here. My
yeah,
first story is, do you see that OpenAI is
right.
planning to go public
Well, they're turning into a for-profit company,
or
which
for profit? Yeah.
from being the original thing, which was nonprofit. And yeah, Elon Musk is madder than hell, saying this is sort of illegal. Here, I invested in it, and then you change the rules. He might be right. I wonder if he can win in court or something on that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the law here is kind of interesting as well because they have to go to Delaware because that's where it's incorporated. And they also have to get permission in California because they're based out of California.
Yeah.
And it can be done, but the valuation, I have no idea. Do you know what OpenAI is valued at?
Oh, I think it's huge, but I don't
It
know.
is.
I think it's
Yeah.
huge like Nvidia. I think it's valued at a monstrous amount.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have an exact number, but it is very high. And from what I understand, or the limited knowledge I have about this, because they started off being not for profit, now they're moving to profit, they have to kind of make amends and pay the back taxes of being a nonprofit.
Well, that would make sense, I guess. But it seems
Yeah,
like they should
because
also have to pay their investors.
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be interesting. It's battling out in court. And the reason I
Yeah.
bring up the tax issue is because the valuation of the company is so high that I don't think they have anywhere near the assets to pay those taxes to do the conversion.
Well, that takes me to one I saw. I've been wondering when people are going to stop spending money on AI so much. And the answer is no time soon.
Yeah.
Microsoft just announced that they're going to invest another 80 billion in 2025 in AI, and Amazon last year spent 75 billion in AI, and they're expecting to spend even more in 2025. So they're going to be rolling in money for at least another year.
Yeah. Yeah. So buy NVIDIA
All without
stock,
a,
huh?
yeah, all without a single product that actually makes anything like that money coming back. This is all just speculation. They're all betting that it's going to be huge like the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. We'll
I
see.
know. I mean, so far the actual usable products are very far from impressive enough to justify that amount of money.
Yeah, but I've used it a little bit and it is helpful.
Sure.
It's not reliable, but it offers some guidance.
I mean, if it's going to be like the new iPhone, then I guess that money would be justified. But have you really found AI to be as useful as your iPhone? I don't even see it as 1% as useful as my iPhone.
No, but it is in some ways a replacement for Google because
Sure,
of Google searches.
sure. I mean, it might mess up Google's business model, but
Yeah,
you know, how much real value is there in a thing, that search engine that's a bit better than Google? There's some value, but I don't think it's. Anyway, we're going to see. It's going to have like a robot in every home or something powered by AI to justify this amount of investment, I think. It's going to have to
yeah,
be like my
yeah,
iPhone, like everybody. An iPhone is a big part of my life. I must use that for like 4 hours every day. That's really
yeah,
enormous.
yeah.
It's going to have to be like that. I'm going to have to be using AI like 4 hours every day to justify this investment. And I'm not currently.
No, but indirectly you might, meaning other companies behind the covers will probably be using it. So
Yeah.
indirectly you'll benefit. We'll
Well,
see.
I'm sure my Amazon product recommendations are coming from AI and things like that, but I don't think I would care if they didn't.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah,
so
yeah. All
I
right,
got
what else you got?
I can
Let's
get into
let's
some
move
tech
along.
stuff. What I thought was pretty interesting is that the Eutelsat has announced a bunch of broadband service, and they're running it with a bunch of satellites up there. I think only like 50 or 60, not. But anyway, their entire broadband service went down for 2 days because they could not calculate the date properly in their ground-based computers. It was like the Y2K, the leap year problem when they had day 366 in 2024 impacted the manual calculation for the GPS to UTC offset. So for 2 days, their service went down because they couldn't even handle a leap year. So that's pretty appalling.
So wait, when this leap year was when?
Well, the 2024.
Yeah. So
Had
why?
366 days instead of 365. So they were working by the count of days, and somehow they didn't think of that. So when it hit the 366th day, they decided it was actually an earlier year, like 1970 or something. And therefore they weren't able to synchronize their calendar correctly.
So is this something that just happened, or is
Yes.
this?
Yeah, just over the change of the year, December 31, 2024.
Oh, I see. So right, there would have been 366 days.
Right. And they couldn't handle that. So I guess the
Yeah.
service must be new. They must not have had this problem in 2020. So anyway, that's a pretty stupid reason to have an outage for 2 days, but that's what happened. Um,
Yeah. Interesting. It went on for 2 days as well.
yep.
So they couldn't get it resolved in less time.
Apparently not. And
Yeah.
uh, there's there's also AstraZeneca people are now developing a vaccine for the bubonic plague, and they say they're worried about the bubonic plague. They're worried it's going to mutate and spread again, and they think we should have stockpiles of vaccine against it. Apparently, there is no current approved vaccine for bubonic plague.
Oh, is that
So,
right?
yeah, so
Huh.
they're making one. That seems like a good idea. I know the plague is around. I see warnings here in California. If you go to hiking in the redwoods, they'll warn you that the like little animals like chipmunks and stuff are infected with bubonic plague, and you can get the plague from them. So it is a still disease that's out there. Now they treat it with antibiotics, which greatly increases the survival rate, but it probably is a good idea. There probably ought to exist a vaccine.
Yeah. Yeah. Sam, do you recall what bubonic plague is?
Well, I've seen the name, but I forgot.
Yeah, I've forgotten too.
Yeah, it's I pretty well know what it is, but
Yeah, you know what else is sort of making a comeback is tuberculosis.
oh, I know I have to take tuberculosis tests every few years just to be a college teacher, so it is still spreading around.
Yeah, and in South America, it's spreading. I think it's in the prison populations. It's 25 times what it is in the public
Well, I've heard
or
this.
in the
The
wild.
same thing was true of
Yeah,
COVID. They couldn't stop it in prisons because they're all just crowded together in little cells.
yeah, yeah.
Just like old folks' homes, the same thing. They're crowded together in small B places. Um, it makes sense, and there's no vaccine for that either, is there?
No, there's not.
Yeah.
Um, there's a drug regimen, if I recall, and but it doesn't necessarily clear it up completely.
Yeah, I know. I just took another TB test recently. I have to do it, I think, every 3 years to be a teacher.
But you didn't take the actual test. You took a self-certification.
No, I went and had to take tests twice at City College. I had to go have them inject something under my
Yeah,
skin in
okay.
60 days. And the latest one was a blood test. They took a blood sample. There are TB
Uh,
tests, and I have to go take a medical TB test and get a note from an official documentation from a doctor
yeah,
every 2 years. So that's, I guess, some California law.
yeah. Kind of since we're talking about diseases, this is kind of interesting. There in 2017, there were three people that were still alive by using an iron lung. Do you remember that?
But that's polio, right? I didn't
That's
know. Yeah,
polio.
yeah,
Yeah. And there was one man who around 2018, 2019 had lived all 70 years in an iron lung.
yeah.
And obviously nobody's making those anymore. But there was sort of a panic on his part because there was a part that finally broke on his iron lung, and he was requesting, does somebody have a spare part for this iron lung that I'm in?
Well, with RFK Jr. coming in, that would be a good company to invest in, whoever makes iron lungs.
Well, the answer is no one. So there was a machine shop that agreed to fabricate the part that he needed. And they did, and so the iron lung was, fine again.
Well, I imagine
Um,
3D printing might be a good answer too.
yeah, yeah. So he passed away in March, I think, of last year
Yeah.
after spending 73 years. He went to college in an iron lung. He would be pushed down the hallways into the classroom. He also became a lawyer. And
Yeah.
so for his career, he was a lawyer in an iron lung. And I saw an interview with him, and his argument was, look, if you want somebody that's going to fight for you, look at the fight that I've had to go through to
Yeah.
become an attorney.
Well, I'm all for it. I was a caretaker for a pretty severely handicapped guy for many years, and I found it very
Yeah,
inspiring. As I got old and sick, you just don't let it stop you. You just
yeah,
do what you want to do. You figure out how to do it. You work around your limitations. I found
yeah,
that to be an inspiring idea. You don't really need to let these things stop you if you can find a workaround.
yeah,
I knew
yeah.
another guy that was like old and sick, and he said, "Yeah, these temporarily able-bodied people don't understand, but their time will come when they understand how this works."
That's true.
I know. Well,
So
yeah,
yeah.
unless you die
So,
young, you'll have the joy of getting broken down and figuring out how to cope with it.
yeah. So to kind of wrap the iron lung story, I believe that there's one woman that's still alive today,
Yeah,
and she doesn't have to spend her entire life in iron lung, but she spends like a half day or a quarter of a day. She kind of needs a boost here and there, so to speak.
that's sort of like people that get dialysis. I mean, they have to go in and get that like
Yeah,
every couple of days, and you know, yeah.
yeah. So we'll see if iron lungs will make a comeback. I don't think so. I think they have other treatments.
Well, you're on mute or something. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, yeah. I said I hope they have. I believe
I
they
think they
have
have better
other
treatment.
treatments.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that would be good. Yeah. All
yeah.
right.
But yeah, there were times there were hospital words or pictures. If you go on YouTube or if you go on Google Images of where they had walls of iron lungs that kids were in them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
I've got
Next
a
one for
couple.
you.
I have a couple of tech stories.
Okay.
The one is so as you know, the Chinese typhoon attacks, they've hacked all our cell phone networks and many other things, and people are getting very upset about it. And one thing that came out in the last few weeks is the US federal government has now told people don't use SMS anymore. Instead, use Signal, which is kind of interesting because the FBI and government is telling you not to use encrypted messengers because they're so worried about the government not being able to spy on you. But now they've reversed course. And they say you should quit using SMS and you should even quit using SMS-based multi-factor authentication. So it appears that the crypto wars, this is a big step for the crypto punks, saying the people that wanted to push cryptography have
Yep.
apparently triumphed. What they all said all along was true, that you need strong cryptography to stop the bad guys, and it's even acceptable that it will also stop the police from snooping on you. And that appears to be where the government has ended up.
Yeah, this is going to get interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the point, there's another opinion piece I saw that said that the problem is the telephone companies are terribly insecure. And they say the techniques Salt Typhoon used to hack the phone companies are the same techniques used in another break-in 40 years ago when the UK's British Telecom Prestel text message service was attacked. He says an industry unable to learn something in 40 years has no legitimacy, and there's no sign it is learning now. And I think you could take that attitude, but another thing to say is we just have a lot of legacy infrastructure, and it's too
Yeah.
expensive to update it all. So I think we're still using SS7. I think, the problem is the legacy phone network is old and
Yeah,
it can't
and
really be
yeah,
made secure.
yeah. It's kind of like the electric grid.
Yeah.
It's we have equipment out there that's 50, 75, 100 years old. And the thing is it works. So there's no value in replacing it other than it becomes more reliable.
Yeah. And well, now that we're getting hacked right and left, there may be some motivation to spend the necessary money to secure it, but you'd really have to pay. I think the only reasonable answer would be to add some kind of security device on the outside of it, like a firewall or something. You don't have to replace it all, but you need to put some kind of filter. But anyway, we'll have to do something, I
Yeah,
think. And it's
yeah.
going to be expensive any way you cut it.
Right, right. And PG&E here in California has some more rate increases in store for us in 2025 already.
Oh, I'm sure they do, but that's mainly because of wildfires, which is because of climate change. That's the huge one. Like I guess you own a house. Can you even get house insurance anymore? I'm seeing all sorts of scary stories about it.
Nope. So that has to do with Newsom. That's kind of a different story. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of people can't get fire insurance, and the reason is because Newsom essentially put a cap on the amount that they could charge. So they said, "Fine, we won't write policies anymore."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
So this is also affecting the housing market
yeah,
because now when you go to buy a house, you might not be able to get fire insurance.
that's right. And the risk is high. Yeah. Well, anyway,
Yeah,
there's a kind of fun hacking story. Raspberry Pi has a
yeah,
new, more secure Raspberry Pi. They've added a bunch of security features, which I must say, Raspberry Pis have been notoriously insecure, but I didn't know anybody cared because they're super
yeah.
cheap is the thing. But they have a lot of new security features like Secure Boot and Trust Zone. And in particular, they have a sort of TPM processor. And so there's supposed to be a chip where you can put in a one-time programmable memory, which will be once set but never forget binary code where the code is hidden and you cannot steal it from the processor. And so they had a challenge for $20,000 prize if anybody could steal the secret from the chip, and they would send you a Raspberry Pi with a secret hidden in it, and you had to find it. And at Chaos Communication Congress, a guy got it. And what he found was the way it works is you can store memory in a core and then you disable it permanently. But he found the pin that would control the disabling, and he was able to send a voltage glitch down that pin, which re-enabled the supposedly disabled core so he could access the memory. And he said, if you did not physically destroy the silicon, don't tell me anything is permanently disabled about the silicon. But anyway, that was pretty clever hardware hacking.
So essentially, years ago, we used to have EPROMs.
Yeah.
and you would write the EEPROM. There was a fusible link that would be burned,
Right.
and in theory, that EEPROM was now read only, or I guess
Yeah.
it was read only.
Yeah. And you could do that, but here you need to have a processor. And so I don't quite understand exactly how, because you're not
Okay.
destroying the part that holds the memory. What I think you're doing is destroying the connection to the other processor.
Well, it sounds like what's happened is that bit to make it read only is software,
Yeah.
and that bit can be flipped.
Yeah. Well, I think I know more about trusted platform modules, which is what this sounds like.
Yeah.
And there you have a processor that can do things with the key, but it cannot hand out the key. You
Right.
can just say
Yeah.
decrypt this stuff and it will decrypt it. But anyway, what he said, which is, yeah, that was defeated by Joe Grand. He actually got the key off of a trusted platform module by dissolving it with acid and reaching in until he could find the pin that had the key in it. And that's what he said. He said, if the key is in there anywhere, there's going to be a way to reach in with hardware hacking and find it.
Yeah. But with that, again, you have to have the physical computer.
And so is this. This is a physical attack. He had
Yeah.
to like disconnect a pin from the motherboard and attach a probe to it and feed a voltage spike into it. They have defenses against glitching, but evidently he overcame those defenses. So, it is the
Yeah.
usual thing. There are defenses and attacks, and they're ramping up on both sides.
All right. Okay.
Um, and I think the last one worth mentioning is something you probably know. While I was on vacation in Milwaukee, I got a text saying I had to pay a fast track penalty from driving over the bridge on December 31 when I wasn't even in the state. And apparently a lot of people are getting these. It's been going on for years, but there's a big rush of them again. So people should be aware. It looked pretty good. My first thought is, what? I have to pay my fast track? For a few seconds I was believing it. Then I said, wait
Yeah.
a minute. This
So,
can't be
so
right.
Sam, other than you not being in California at the time, what was the other giveaway?
I think the URL looked a little funny.
Yeah, but what else? What was
Uh,
glaringly off?
Nothing else struck me as
The
glaringly
the
wrong.
dollar amount.
Oh, there was some dollar amount, but I don't really know what it was. And like, if I don't know what I think it said like a fast track violation and you owe like $100 or something. I said, hell, that could be true. I don't know. What is the penalty for driving through a fast track if your thing doesn't work?
Well, so what they were doing is they were saying the bridge toll was like $7.98.
Oh, well, that's funny. I know it's an even multiple of dollars. I know.
Right, right, right. So you know and even if you drive in the HOV lanes and you pay, it's always it's either a 50 cent or a 25 cent, and the dollar amount was something off like $7.23. The other is that they said it was mandatory that you pay by the 23rd or 20 or 24th or 25th of December.
Yeah, I did notice that you had only a few days to pay, and that sounds ridiculous. And anything we could do with the
Yeah.
government, you usually get like 30 or 90 days to pay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly, if you get a fast track violation, you have 90 days to go. If you have a fast track account, you have 90 days to go in, put that plate number in, and they'll retroactively charge it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So,
why, I mean, there were enough clues that I pretty
yeah.
rapidly figured out I would just ignore it. But then when I posted about it, I asked it, and people said they'd been seeing it. Apparently, a lot of people are getting it, so I thought it might be worth mentioning.
It was one of those, I think, holiday that the urgency of it
Yeah.
and fast track not being open.
And
You
I
know,
think the fact that everybody was traveling for the holiday. So
yeah,
everybody probably
yeah.
did drive somewhere different, and maybe they're going to think, oh, I triggered some kind of traffic sensor that I didn't know about.
Yeah, the other thing that was kind of interesting is I got that message. I tried to go into Fast Track's website and it said it was offline for maintenance.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, so it came back several days later, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
But they do have a banner warning up there now, beware of fake Fast Track,
yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, I think this is a good one. I met when I was on Twitter years ago, and I was new. My 5,000th follower was a guy from eBay, and I ran into him at the airport, and he
Yeah.
told me that he ran fraud detection at eBay. And I said, oh, I bet,
Oh,
was it PayPal? I think it was PayPal. And I said, I think half of all the spam is about PayPal. And he said, that's exactly right. Half of all the financial spam says your PayPal has been hacked.
yeah,
And I think you
yeah.
search for something like this where you figure everybody has fast track. So if I just send out to 1 million people saying you're fast track, you owe us money, probably for 80% of them, that's plausible.
Well, I have a business and I received a letter, physical letter in the mail that it said it's time to renew your business license.
Right.
And the business license, I don't know, was $35, but they wanted $135. And you look at the very bottom and it says in 7-point type, this is not a government letter. This is a service to renew,
Yeah.
your business license. So what's happening is instead of you paying directly, you pay a third party a premium of $100 to do the same thing.
That sounds almost legitimate. They probably could defend that in court. But this reminds me of
Yeah.
one of the cases I worked on when I was in fraud restitution was a scam where they would sell you paper and toner for your company and at a real good price, and they would just never send you anything. They would just take your money and send you nothing. And they got away with this for years. Like I kind of know a lot of companies I worked at, they'd have like a purchasing department, and then it would get shipped to the mailroom, and they really didn't know if it ever got there. They really didn't close the loop very well.
Yeah. Yeah. So fake invoices essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
scams don't have to be complicated to make a lot of
No, they
money.
don't. They don't. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So here's my last one for the day. And this is sort of an interesting one. That Trump is requesting a delay in the TikTok ban. And it's supposed to go into effect on the day before he officially takes office.
Right, the 19th of January.
Yeah. Now, the question I have is how can he have the court rehear a case
Well,
and get on the docket?
Well, I've read commentary and they say
Yeah.
this filing is like so many of Trump's filings, it is completely insane. It says
Yeah.
it brags about how much he won the election by and how important he is. And he said, just considering how politically important I am, you should delay this so I have time to weigh on it. It's not a legal argument. It's just like the typical strongman argument, you better not cross me. And they said, presumably, the courts will not honor this since it is not, in fact, a legal argument based on anything. It's just sort of a threat, an intimidation argument.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like you pull over somebody and the guy says, don't you know who I am? I'm important. You better not give me a ticket. That's essentially what the argument is. And I
Yeah.
think the court, they wouldn't have the legal authority to delay enforcement. Uh, even if they wanted to just honor his position. But I think, we're headed into a new Gilded Age where it's all going to be about this. Guys that are important, like Musk and Trump, are
Yeah.
going to just say, I'm too important, the law doesn't apply to me. And that seems to be true in practice, right? He committed a ton of crimes. He was prosecuted for them, and all those cases just vanished because he won the election. So
Well, I don't think they've vanished. I think he's being sentenced this week, is he not?
supposedly he is, just for a
Yeah.
fine, though, no jail time. Most of them were dropped completely. They dropped the teeth out of all of them, but a bunch of them, like the documents case where he was obviously guilty of sin, just completely vanished. Um, Jack Smith had to drop his case. The fact is, remember when Trump argued with Pence when and before the January 6th insurrection 4 years ago, and he told Pence, "You need to like stop the counting of the votes." And he said, "I can't do that. I don't have the authorization." And he pointed out the window, the crowd of people chanting and waving signs, and said, "There's your authorization. The people are behind me. You can do. The law doesn't matter. If the people are behind me, I can do whatever I want."
Yeah.
And in practice, that appears to be true.
Yeah. Trial by media.
Well, and basically, a popular revolution, right? If the people
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
you, then all the structures don't really matter.
Yeah. Sam, this kind of, you just reminded me of a story. Goes back 100 more years. But did you ever see the photograph of the horse where there was a bet that are all hooves of a horse off the ground? at the
Oh, I
same
heard about them.
time.
Yeah, big argument when they run. Do all their hooves leave the ground at the same time? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was an incredibly famous photographer at the time who lived in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, he had a wife that was much younger than he was. And the wife had a boyfriend on the side. And I think it was up in Napa, Sonoma, someplace like that. He found out about the boyfriend, went up there, killed him in a bar in cold blood, was
Oh,
brought back to San Francisco. And the trial was in San Francisco. And his story was, look, I was mad. And they said, well, you got a wife, a young wife, and yeah, we understand that. Not guilty.
the same thing happened with the famous guy that killed Harvey Milk, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, they said he said he was mad because he ate Twinkies and it made him psychopathic, and the jury let him off. Essentially, jury nullification.
yeah,
If what you did is popular, then they'll just let you off. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there have been a lot of trials like that. Do you remember Bernard Getz on the subway shooting?
Oh yeah.
That was a trial by media
Yeah.
or trial by public.
Yeah.
Trial,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, we're going to have no end of corruption stories for the next 4 years, obviously, and probably longer
I
than that.
think you're right. I think we're going to see creative enforcement of laws, should I say.
It'll be interesting to see if Trump runs again in 28 or if Musk runs in 28, because they both made it pretty clear that they don't give a damn about the Constitution. And it's pretty clear that the Supreme Court doesn't give much of a damn about the Constitution either. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. I think didn't Mitt Romney's dad run for president?
I don't know.
And Mitt Romney's dad was born in Mexico.
That would appear to be an insurmountable obstacle, but maybe
Well,
not.
well, it's the same with Musk. He
It
was
is.
not born in the U.S.
It
Yeah,
is. That ought to be the end of it. But by the way, participating in an insurrection should make Trump ineligible according to 14th Amendment. So they're just ignoring that. So just ignoring parts of the Constitution, which is what Trump said, just suspend parts of the Constitution to give
yeah,
me power. That does seem to be, in fact, happening.
yeah, yeah. We'll see. So,
Yeah.
well, Sam, we got to see what happens,
Yeah.
and if history repeats itself, shortly after he takes power, there'll be a Reichstag fire and an enabling act. That's
Well,
that's
before he got in, you had the Supreme Court Enabling Act that made it legal for him to commit murder. That's why
yeah,
it's that was stunning. I They actually said that in the arguments. It just means he can just execute his political enemies and have no penalty. And they said, yeah, that's what it means. It's unbelievable. I
yeah,
mean, so we'll see. But once he
yeah.
gets
We'll
in,
see is
he
the
now
answer.
he now knows he can totally break any laws he wants to with impunity once he gets in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, very
We
much
will see,
exciting
Sam.
times. Yeah.
We will see.
All right.
Have you heard one last thing? Have you heard anything about Project 2025?
Only before he got in. I think now that he's going to get in, I think his people will try to do it essentially, and we'll see how much of it comes true.
Yeah,
I think it
yeah,
was just sort of a list of the most extreme right-wing positions like banning divorce, banning pornography, enforcing Christian religion everywhere, and things like that. I think he's in favor of most of that, but I don't know how much of it he'll actually do.
yeah. That's the question I'm asking. So you have not heard anything, any updates on that for
Well,
maybe a
no,
month or so?
well, yeah, but I mean, what's happening is he's appointing all these cabinet members, and a bunch of them are on the Project 2025 team. So once
Ah,
once they're in there, then they will presumably try to do that stuff, and we'll see how much of it gets blocked by the courts and Congress and stuff.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So here we go. Looks like we're going to have a lot of court time, a lot of paralysis
Hope that
as
would be the
these
best
things.
outcome. The best
Yeah.
outcome, which one of my students said, is he won't actually be able to do stuff like the deportation and the tariffs and everything. It'll all get blocked by the other structures. I don't know. We're going to see.
The question is when, right? When is the blocking going to occur?
I know. And how
Before?
I
Yeah,
think he can do the tariffs with executive orders. And I think
yeah,
he might be able to do the deportation with executive orders. Certainly by declaring martial law, he could. So we'll just see how serious he is about doing this stuff.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Interesting
Okay.
4 years. He
Yeah.
takes office in what? Officially
Two
in
weeks.
3 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
All
So,
right.
yep. And so, anyway, that's it for this one. And we'll have another one on
That's it.
Friday.
Yep. On the
Farewell.
10th. Yeah.